Yo, 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 yo. Hello, everybody. This is your boy, Ashley of the BeU podcast. Don't forget on Instagram, Ashley underscore BEU number 4 EVR on Instagram. Find the BeU podcast on all podcasting platforms. Like I always say, I think most of you use Apple Podcasts and Spotify, which are the two most popular. But we're on all podcast platforms, Google Podcasts, Breaker, etc., etc. You can find us on all of them. That's not an issue. So today, unfortunately, my man's Mr. Lovely Day couldn't make it. I believe he may have caught up with some family business or something of that nature. So we're going to be going solo with this interview today. Just me, our guest, and you out there that are part of the BeU family. I really appreciate you for joining me. Today, we're going to be speaking with Ella. I really like her name on Instagram too. Ella the Connector. Really deep. I really like that. I was looking at that. I was like, man, that's a dope ass name. I wish I would have thought of it first. But yeah, so we're gonna be speaking with her. And we're gonna go into a short interlude. And when we come back, I'm gonna give you the introduction of Miss Ella, and then we're gonna get into it. So as you always know, sit back, relax, and always be you. All right. So we're back at it, my people. And I have Miss Ella sitting here with me.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited. Thank you for having me here.
No, thank you for coming on, man. I'm still surprised that we're already so many episodes in,
Yeah.
and that I've been talking to some amazing and beautiful people from different cultures, different ages, different backgrounds, and I've really been enjoying this.
Yeah. It
So
sounds
if you
great.
don't,
Yeah.
so if you don't mind, can I just go ahead and give a little bio about you?
Sure.
A
It
little
sounds
background,
good.
introduce the
Yeah.
people to you, the amazing
Yeah.
Ella.
I appreciate that.
No problem at all. So Ella McCann,
McCann. Yep.
McCann is an international program manager with Chicago Sister Cities International. Ella manages volunteer sister cities committees, coordinates exchanges that focus on cultural arts and tourism, international business and economic development, global education and government relations between Chicago and its sister cities. Facilities facilitates international delegation visits and
Yep.
produces CSCI program wide events. Ooh, okay, we got a little bit more.
Yeah.
Ella is a native of Chicago, Illinois. Okay, Chi-Town stand up. That's what's going
Thank
on.
you.
She holds a bachelor's of arts and language as a tool to break down cultural barriers from the Johnston Center of Integrative Studies at the University of Redlands in Southern California. Before joining Chicago Sister Cities International, Ella was the outreach coordinator at the Consulate General of Japan in Chicago, managing school visits at Chicago public schools and introducing Japanese culture to Chicagoans. From 2012 to 2014, she lived in Japan and was an assistant language teacher in Chiba Prefecture as part of the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. Ella is fluent in Japanese and knowledgeable in Spanish. Ohio gozaimasu from Japan, okay? In 2018, Ella was awarded 40 Game Changers under 40 in Chicago by the Urban Business Roundtable presented at WVON and Ariel Investments. In 2020, Ella launched Ella Marie TV, interviewing people all over the world who are pushing the culture forward.
Wow.
Woo!
Sounds good when you read it.
Wow.
Sounds good when you read it. I'm always just like,
Don't play yourself down like that. It is good.
no,
And it
thank
is
you.
amazing that
Thank
you
you.
are doing that for the culture.
I'm
Thank you for
trying.
joining me today.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. So
I'm
quickly
excited.
before we get into the questions, you said you have a Ella Marie TV. Can you just
Yep.
give a little background? Go ahead and give a little background about that for people before we get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can find it Ella Marie Terebi, Terebi, which is the phonetic spelling of TV in Japanese on YouTube. Yeah, Terebi. And I interview people all over the world. A lot of musicians that are working with K-pop artists or writing songs. A lot of local Chicago artists, and just people who are really pushing, Black culture forward or culture forward in general all over the world. And I launched it back in August last year, and it's been great so far. Got to interview Paper Pat, who's been really big in Japan as a teacher on TikTok, if you will. That's my most recent one. So yeah, hope you all check it out.
Yeah, man, we definitely will. My boy.
What's up? Hello, everyone. Amazon came at the wrong time, so.
I know I told y'all that it seemed like my boy probably wouldn't be joining me because I thought something maybe came up with the wife or something, man. So I was like, oh, stuff happens. So we're going to go ahead and run it. But he's here.
Yeah, Amazon came with my pack. So, and then, yeah, it's crazy. They mixed the packages. And then I was like, oh, I don't have that money. Let me find it. They mixed me and the wife's packages together. We were both confused. We were like,
oh my gosh.
This not adding up. Oh, they're together. Okay.
Thanks for coming, my brother. So he's here, and we both at it again on the BeU podcast.
Ella, I love your show. I checked it out the other day.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Did I subscribe? I think I know I liked. Let me make sure.
I think so. I feel like you did.
I'm a YouTube head, so sometimes I just be going through I just go through folks' stuff, and sometimes I don't. I forget to. I'll go back and back check.
Yeah, let me know if there's anything. Yeah.
Yeah, before we get into it, like I said, that's why we kind of mix and match pretty well. I'm kind of like the mild, like crazy dude, and Lavelle like the more smooth, calm, and collected, calculated brother.
You gotta have balance. You gotta have balance.
Yeah, you gotta have. Exactly. So let's go ahead, man. Let's go ahead and get into it then. So first, Ella, what I gotta ask you is, what brought you to be interested in Japan as a woman, and not only as a woman, as a African American Black woman? We are really curious about that, and I think a lot of people out there in the BeU family, in the podcast world, would like to know that as well too.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I grew up studying Spanish my whole life, and I like from kindergarten, and I got to college. As you mentioned, I went to the University of Redlands, the Johnson Center for Integrative Studies, and at the time, the university had a program called May Term. And so I had originally planned when I went to college that I was going to go study abroad in Ecuador for May Term, and then I was going to go to Spain for my study abroad, like longer term thing, because Spanish was the only language that I knew, and I thought that's how I'm gonna make it happen. And I went to the program that they have to introduce you to the different options for May Term. And this my sensei gets up on stage, my eventual sensei, Kawahara sensei, gets up on stage, and she's just like, yeah, so I take people to Japan for a month, and we do like 2 weeks of travel and then 2 weeks of homestay. So if you're interested, let me know. And I don't know what happened in my brain, but it just I clicked, and I was like, I want to go to Japan. Like, I need to go to Japan. So I ran up to her after it was done, and I was like, I really want to go. And she's like, okay, just fill this out. And then that night I called my parents, and I was like, can I go to Japan? And they were like, I guess. And so I ended up going to Japan at the end of my first year of college, and it completely changed my life. So I had been abroad. I'd been to Mexico before, right? But I hadn't really been out of the country, and I hadn't been to a culture that was so drastically different from my own. And so for 2 weeks, we traveled to Hiroshima, Osaka, Kyoto, and then we went up to Chiba Prefecture. And we stayed in Chiba for 2 weeks with homestay families. And I had 2 wonderful host families that I'm still in touch with to this day. And I decided at the end of that I wanted to be able to speak to them in Japanese. And so I went back to my university and started learning Japanese. Turned out I was pretty good at languages. Didn't know until sophomore year of college, but it's okay. We learn in time and we figure things out, right? And so I started learning more and more about Japanese culture and Japan. And then I was supposed to go study abroad, and the Great East Japan earthquake happened. And so unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. It happened literally the day after my 21st birthday. And I remember because I flew out to LA getting ready to go to Japan. And they were like, no, we're not sending you. And I was like, oh, okay. So I studied Japanese at UCLA that summer. And then I decided that I wanted to go live in Japan no matter what. And I applied for both the Fulbright and the JET program. And I happened to get into the JET program. And that was sort of how I ended up living there for a couple of years. But I would say my interests really just came out of the blue. I was never really big into like anime or manga. When I was younger, I bought a book called like My First 1,000 Words in Japanese and like learned to count. But like it didn't occur to me that like that may have been me being interested in Japan. So I'm still trying to uncover what it was that really sparked the interest in me that one night in October, my first year of college. But whatever it was, I'm glad that it happened. And I think, I didn't think about it so much as being a woman or a Black woman. And the first time that I went there, that wasn't really a thing because we were just there for a short period of time. And I was with a bunch of other students. And so it didn't really matter. But as I got to live there, that aspect definitely changed a little bit. And, living there as a Black woman is, especially in the countryside, I was in Kamogawa, which is a town of like 30,000 people roughly. So it's like fairly small. It's in the Inaka, like the countryside. I definitely stood out. That was for sure. And I was definitely, I had my afro and was a lot darker skinned than maybe a lot of people have seen before. So yeah, that was an interesting aspect of it. But yeah, I think that was how I got interested in it.
Wow, that was a great story. And I think I met you around that time after 11. I remember your face very well. I was like,
Oh,
I met her at a party in Roppongi before. It was like someone's birthday party.
It was either somebody's birthday or it might have been one of the Black History Month events.
No, it was a birthday party for sure.
It was a birthday?
Yeah, and we was in like this restaurant.
Monique? Might have been
Yes,
Monique.
I know Monique. It was someone else. I think it was like Daisha or someone. It was somebody real
okay.
cool.
It might have been Daisha's. Yeah.
Yeah, it was someone's. And then that's why when I saw your face, I was like,
yeah,
I know I met you because you were sitting down just cool as all get out. I was like, hey.
I probably was.
And
I vaguely remember it. Yeah.
And you were doing a lot of laughing. So that's why I remember your laugh. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, as a woman, it didn't necessarily, at the time when I first became interested in it, it wasn't as big of a thing. But as I grew to live there, that's when that started to become more of a factor, if you will.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that because I'm not an anime too, so like.
Yeah. I never really was into like anime or manga. And it's nothing against it. I was really into Hayao Miyazaki films. So like Spirited Away, Totoro, things like that. I really loved those, but it didn't click to me that those were like from Japan. And I really now that I look back on it, I really knew nothing about Japan or Asia or really anything. For as worldly as my family was, my mom traveled a lot for work. I just did not know nearly as much as I know now about the cultures and things like that. But yeah.
That's usually how it always is.
Mm-hmm.
But before I move on to the next question, you got any interesting stories or memories from your time in the Inaka that you can share?
Goodness.
I'm sure you probably do.
Oh goodness, there were so many. I really loved my little town, Kamogawa. It was right on the ocean, and I lived like a minute from the ocean, so I learned how to surf. My neighbors were really great. I'm still in touch with them. They run Sue restaurant over there in Kamogawa, and they taught me how to surf and really got to explore all of the city because of them. If I were to think of one really great memory there, I always enjoyed going. I was a multiple school ALT, so I taught at like 7 different schools, and I met a teacher at one of my schools, Hitomi Sensei, who I'm still in touch with, and she and I decided to go to see Takarazuka, which is like the all female class, like the opposite of Kabuki. So like it's all females playing the roles. We got to do that. That was in Tokyo, but it came from knowing her in Kamogawa. There's so many cafes that I got to visit in the little town, and we had Kamogawa SeaWorld, so it was always fun going to see that. But I think like there's so many different experiences that I got to have. It's hard to think of just like one that really stood out. But I really enjoyed that city. I call it like my third home, and really always, I want to go back all the time, and see everyone and visit everybody and say hi. Yeah.
And how long did you stay in Japan?
I was in Japan for 2 years. So with the JET program, you can contract. It's a 1-year contract, and then you can extend it up to 5 years now at this point. So I was there for 2 years, and it was really, I think for me, the first year was getting grounded, right, and then the second year was really flourishing there. So I did live close enough to go to Tokyo every weekend, and that's how I met, Daisha and Monique and a number of people that are still there now. And so I think for me, the first year was kind of figuring that out, and then the second year was implementing that. And yeah, it was a great experience. I don't know that I would have stayed much longer, but I think 2 years was good for me. Yeah, it was a good experience. Yeah.
Understood. So let's go ahead and move on. Lavelle, you want to go ahead and take the next question, brother?
Yes. With time in Japan, did you feel that you were being accepted into society? If so, when did you realize that?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I think, again, with the first year and second year, if I compare the two, it wasn't until I said I was leaving that I was accepted. And this is something that I have reflected on for a while. Because I was a multiple school ALT, I was going to different schools every day. And, in Japan, the idea is that you're with your group sort of for a set period of time, right? So teachers rotate every 2 years, but they're with that school for those 2 years. Whereas for me, I was going to one school in the morning and one school in the afternoon. And then the other day I was going to the school and the kindergarten and the elementary school. And so I was never able to really get close to any of the staff that I worked with. And that felt a little isolating at first. And so when I decided that I wasn't going to extend past to a third year, that was about a year before I was leaving, right? That was when I started to feel like maybe I was being a little bit more accepted. I started getting invited to the bonenkais and the shinenkais, and everybody wanted to go to dinner and everybody wanted to hang out. And I did speak the language. Funny story, I remember the first day I showed up to one of my schools, my teacher was like, no Japanese at school. And I was like, what? Like, I have worked so hard on this Japanese. Like, you are going to hear this, right? Like, why are you telling me no? And she's like, because the students, if they know that you speak Japanese, they will not try and learn English. I was like, oh, okay. And so it took me, like that at first made me feel like I wasn't being accepted. But then once I only used English with the students and things like that, they started to be like, okay, like she knows it, but like she's not going to speak it with us. So we're going to try and learn English, right? So when the students started to accept me more and the teachers started to accept me more, I think that was when I realized like, oh, okay, like I'm actually able to assimilate to some extent into Japanese culture. And that was really what I studied in college, right? Language as a tool to break down cultural barriers is really about figuring out if, because I know the language and the culture, can I actually assimilate into that culture? Can I not? What are the sort of the boundaries on that? And I think with Japan, as much as you think that you're being accepted, you're always going to be an outsider just to some extent, especially as a Black woman. So I think I definitely realized it when I was getting ready to leave, because they were like, no, don't go. Like, don't go. And I was like, no, I gotta go. But like, I wish we had like gotten close the first year so that we could have had more, more opportunities to hang out. But yeah, when I started to realize it was great because I still got to do a lot of things, like I said, with people and go see different shows and experience a lot of different aspects of Japanese culture. One of my favorite memories, it's not from my town, but from a friend of mine, Yuki. Her grandmother, who I believe will be 102 this year, has been practicing tea ceremony pretty much her whole life and has a home in Toyama. And so as I was getting ready to leave Japan, she invited me over for a tea ceremony. We went all the way over to Toyama from Chiba. So that's like a 7-hour trip, like 2 hours to Tokyo and then 5 hours over to Toyama and Kanazawa Prefecture. And we get there and, because I'm able to speak Japanese, her grandmother is just like able to communicate with me. And we have this really great experience of learning tea ceremony. And she told me that I have like the tea ceremony heart and like, that she really, really appreciated me coming out there to see her. And I'll never forget that experience. So there were moments like that where I was like, okay, like now I'm actually sort of being accepted and like really sort of integrated into into that. And a lot of times you'll hear this phrase, "Nihonjin yori Nihonjin boy," which means like you're more Japanese than Japanese people. And I heard that a lot, right? I never like took it as like seriously, I suppose. But I think I tried my best to do as much as I could to practice proper manners and speak the correct way and really make sure they understood that I was doing my best to learn about Japanese society. And that helped me get more accepted into the society.
That's awesome, Ella. Beautiful to hear that. Now, do you feel that many of those relationships that you created were extremely genuine, or more or less due to the fact of their culture still kind of still embedding the fact that you're a visitor, we have to be polite, we must do this, we have to do this, and also the big thing that me and Lavelle love is tatemae.
Yes, good old tatemae.
Good old tatemae, right? So how do you feel those relationships work? I'm pretty sure you do have some of them that you felt and you know they are very genuine about their relationship with you, but how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think the ones that I know were sort of honne, right? So the real true feelings that weren't necessarily tatemae are the ones that I'm still in touch with now, right? Because that meant that they actually did, care about me and wanted to know about me. Now it's a two-way street. Some of those relationships did fall off because of me, right? Because I didn't reach out, or I didn't, keep the email thread going and things like that. But I think to the extent that they're still in touch with me now, that would mean that it's less tatemae and more honne, right? But it definitely always gave you pause, right? There was the dating situation, right? Where like, I remember one time I went to a concert in Yokohama. It was right when I had first moved there. I was leaving, it was like 4 a.m. So I was getting on the first train out. This guy comes up, right? And he wants to get my number and he's talking to me, whatever, And of course, in the end, that was purely like, I just want to be with an American person. So that was very like tatemae type of relationship. Whereas my neighbors who taught me how to surf and they taught me about cleaning up on 311, and they always, like, whenever I would go to their restaurant, they would always feed me and they always checked on me and all those different things. Like, they were genuinely getting to know me and really wanted to know about American culture. And they knew a little bit about it, but they genuinely wanted to like see me succeed. I think another one that unfortunately I didn't keep up with as much as I could have, but Yamada-san was an older man who was at my gym that I would go to in Katsuura, which was about 30 minutes north of my town. And he's the one who taught me. So that this thing right here is a naginata. So it's like a Japanese martial art that I practice. And he taught me naginata. He like invited me to join their team. The sensei gave me that. So that's actually from Japan. It was her naginata. And then he got me like gear that was like stitched with my name. And things like that. So like that felt like a very like genuine thing. Although, I mean, they really accepted me into the team. I'll never forget our team dinner in the middle of the woods in Chiba Prefecture. We're all just there, like laughing and drinking, like speaking Japanese, like having a really great time. And I'll never forget experiences like that. So I think as much as there was a lot of tatemae, I tried to just accept the relationships for what they were. And the ones that were more honne, I think are the ones that I'm still sort of involved with now. But it's definitely, it gives you pause with everybody that you meet when you live there, because you're like, do they actually like want to get to know me? Or are they just trying to get English practice? Or like, do they actually care about who I am as a person? Or are they just trying to be nice because I'm a foreigner, right? And that does make you a little bit insecure about your actions, your friendships. And it makes it hard to make friends in Japan with Japanese people, for sure. Just because you're never sure if they actually like you, if they're just being nice. So I feel bad for people who have to go through that on the daily, because that is definitely, it's really taxing on your emotional, aspects of living there and stuff like that. It can be very isolating. I live, again, in the countryside, so in the winters, when it wasn't as easy to go out, just spending days, much like what we're doing right now, days in my apartment, was very isolating. Whereas, they had family and friends that they could visit and hang out with and and those were their buddies. So yeah, it definitely could get to you sometimes. And I definitely tell people before they go to Japan to just be wary of that, right? Because it will get you caught up and you will not know what's real and what's not if you're not able to sort of distinguish between the honne and the tatemae that happens. Yeah.
Why did you find yourself also like having to fight let me say like tearing down a lot of stereotypes? For example, like when you're out with people, they're like, you don't eat this, right? You don't do this,
Always.
right?
Always.
And it's like you're constantly always trying to prove yourself. Was that a issue you felt?
The one that I got a lot, besides the you don't eat this or like you don't know about this, which like most of the time I did, and so they would be like, hey, like none the shit, like why do you know about that, right? Was Ohashi jozune, like yes, I know how to use chopsticks. Sorry, I don't know. Like, I'm pretty good at it. Yeah. You know, besides that aspect, it was that I could sing, right? That was one of the ones that I got all the time because I'm obviously a bigger Black woman, and they were like, oh, like Aretha Franklin, or like, you know, all those people who are like Black soul singers that are popular in Japan and can sing, and I can't sing to save my life, and I really, really don't like karaoke or karaoke, and so that was one that I had to constantly sort of fight against, and it can get to you, right? Because you can be like, okay, like, can y'all just give me some benefit of the doubt, like that I know something, right? And it can make you feel like, not that you're not smart, but that it just, again, it makes you question everything. And that can get really exhausting. And I think that might have been part of my wanting to leave, right? Because that question was just going to keep coming up. Why are you in Japan? How long are you in Japan? What do you like about Japan? You know, like, what do you know about Japan? Oh, do you know about this? Like, that was always going to keep happening. And I did not have time for that. So I think for me, those questions, yeah, they get really repetitive, and at times they can be a little bit insulting because you're just like, okay, I've been here for like a year now. Like, I do know about that stuff. Like, yes, I know what's going on with that. You know, I know how to do that type of thing. And it's, you know, there's a joke about the gaijin smash, but with those questions repeatedly happening, right? Like that makes you want to like just be the gaijin for a second and just be like, oh no, I don't know about that. Like, you know, because you're just tired of getting questioned about those things. So it's this give and take, right? It's this balance of like trying to really respect and enjoy Japanese culture, and then having it sort of be put in your face as like, but no, you don't really know Japanese culture, right? Like, no, you don't really know about it. Like, that can get kind of annoying and irritating at times, for sure. Yeah.
Wow. That is very tiring. Even hearing you talk about it reminds me, like in America, you're reminded, you have moments where you're reminded that you're Black, right? Like, hey, you're Black. Yeah. In Japan, you're always reminded you don't belong here. So
when are you going home? When are you leaving?
Yeah, when you're leaving.
Right.
And you like, it's like you just got comfortable. You have like, it's like being in someone's house and you finally like got comfortable and they're like, okay, it's time to go.
Right.
You're like,
right.
No,
I'm trying to stay here for a little bit. Yeah, I think it's something that they don't, I don't know, maybe they don't notice that they do it, right? But, or it's one of those like negative passive aggressive things where it's like, don't you want to leave now? Right? Like, don't you want to go home? Like, they're asking you that way. I was like, it's almost like saying like, okay, it's time for you to leave now. Right? Like, it's time for you to leave Japan.
We're trying to be nice to you right now. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
the
funny
you
said about the 5 years. I kind of thought about that. Like, Jet only does 5 years. Like, that's kind of like saying, like, okay, you've had your time here. Go back.
Well, yeah, and most people after their 5th year, it's really a question of like, okay, you're going to stay there for 5 years and then you're going to continue as a teacher. So I know a range of people, right? I know people who have stayed on to be a teacher at elementary schools, kindergartens, all those different things. But I also know people, you know, that have gone on to be singers in Tokyo, have gone on to hold whole musical careers and all those different things. But the 5-year mark is sort of when they're like, all right, so like, you have to make a choice. And, you know, and then you get into the conversation about the visa, right? Where they only extend it for 1 year each year for you, unless you have special circumstances, and maybe they'll give you 3 years. And if you have really special circumstances, they'll give you more. Right. But
the struggle.
Yeah, they seem to make it very difficult for you to stay there long term. I only know a handful of people that are, so Henry Seals, of course, who now has citizenship there, I believe. And then BeU McNeil, who also just bought property, which like goals, like I want to buy property in Japan so bad. So shout out to BeU for doing that. But, people who are there for that long term, I can imagine that they get a little bit tired of it, especially because they're like, no, I'm going to live here for the rest of my life. And people are like, what? Like, why are you doing that? And it can get a little bit frustrating, but yeah.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
For all those listening, it can. But
Yeah.
recently, I think they've been trying to loosen up on immigration to where people it's like a 1-3, it's like a 1-1-3-5.
Yes.
But I know people before it was just like 1-1-1-1. It was like 5-6 years of 1-1-1s.
Yeah.
And they were like, why people want to leave? Can you imagine 1-1-1 for 10 years?
Like you have to go to that office. I never had to do it because I wasn't there long enough. But for all my friends, I've seen their horror stories of like, you have to go to the office, but it's only open during like a certain amount of hours. And if you don't get there on time, you won't be able to get your appointment. So then it's like, and it's also like an hour or two outside of Tokyo, right? And so it's like really difficult to get there sometimes. And they do not make it easy to renew your visa, I've heard. And yeah, I could not imagine having to go every single year for 14 years just to keep living there. Like, at what point do they decide, like, okay, yeah, you're definitely going to live here? Like, you've had a steady job here for this many years. Like, you clearly are not going to just, like, escape or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Some people are buying property here. Some people are living here for their whole life as a foreigner.
Yep.
I would like to get some of those people on the mic and talk about that because I thought, and Lavelle can vouch for this, I was trying hard to stay here for the long term, but then many things changed in my life and I started to view things in a much more broader perspective. Right. And I myself felt as that having conversations with Lavelle and other people that obviously this society does not value me. I've been here 10 years. I speak the language fluently. I have experiences in a variety of industries, and I can't move in a very comfortable way financially.
Yeah.
Gotta cut it. Gotta stop.
Yeah.
So to those who if you're listening to this and you do have the path and you found the route or the way, reach out to the BeU podcast or Ella's channel and let's talk about that. Because I put a lot into this place and didn't get the return that I expected.
Surprise, motherfucker.
And now it has to come, it's coming to a close. Do I love Japan? Yes. I was here for 10 years. I've met a lot of amazing people. I've learned, and I feel, still more learning to do, have mastered the language as well.
Yeah.
And that has branched me out to want to learn other languages as well, as you said as well, Ella. I found that I have a knack for that.
Yep.
So yeah. With that being said, let's move on to the next question, which you kind of alluded into some of these things of why you did this, but let's see if we kind of focus in on that. Is why such a short stay? Like a lot of people say, and probably you yourself as well, think I'm an outlier. I'm an anomaly. 10 years, not military, not prior military, just a guy from the south suburbs of Chicago that came to Japan. Yeah. Usually most, such as yourself, too, maybe, like you said, if you're a jet, 5 at the most. But between that 2 to 5 window, usually people say, all right, I'm going back to my home country or am going to another country to pursue something different. So why your short stay?
Yeah. So it was a very difficult decision. So when I first moved to Japan, I told myself, okay, we're going to give this a year. And just for more context, right, it was hard for me to even move to California. I had never been away from my family for that long. But by the time I was graduating college, I'd been out there for 4 years and I never went home anymore because I had my great grandfather still lives out there and I had family. And so I was just always like, I was fine. Okay. So like I got off on my own. So moving to another country, I was just like, okay, let's just take this step by step, year by year. And the first year was great. Like I said, right. It was the getting my grounding, sort of figuring out my routines, knowing where I like to shop, knowing who I like to hang out with, all those different things, right? And the second year came around, and unfortunately, as often happens in the JET program, at a certain point, depending on the teacher that you have, you become somewhat of a tape recorder. And I was not, because I was multiple school ALT, I was not able to really get to know my students as well as other ALTs who are single school ALTs, right? So if you're just at one school all the time, you get to know your students, they know you see them all the time. But with being a multiple school, I wasn't able to really do that. And so I'm bouncing around from classroom to classroom, and things like that. But it's literally just like, okay, read these words, like keep reading these words. And that was just not going to work for me. And I noticed myself starting to burn out right around the time when the contract renewal was coming up. And I sat on it for a while, really reflected on it. Not gonna lie, my mother really, really, really wanted me to come home. Like she really wanted me to come home. So I think she would have been fine if I stayed another year, but she really, really missed me. And so I decided that it would not be fair for me and for the students to stay any longer because I was not going to be able to give them my best. And I wasn't going to be able to encourage them in the way that I would have liked to do. And so I just knew sort of in my gut that it was time for me to go. And sometimes I think back on it and I'm like, oh, I could have done one more year, but like, I wouldn't have been happy. It wouldn't have been, as fulfilling as it was the first 2 years. And I just didn't want the students to suffer in that way. And I thought it was best to give it to somebody else. Right. And I had a number of experiences that sort of confirmed that it was the right decision. And one of them, you asked about stories about my town in general. And unfortunately, the one that I remember vividly was not a great one. And it was about a month before I was leaving for good. And as I mentioned, there's Kamogawa SeaWorld. And I lived about a mile from it. So one of my white male friends came down and we decided to walk up there because he wanted to go see it. We're walking down the street, down like the main road, and this police car just keeps like circling. All right. And we're just like, that's weird. Like, maybe it's a different car. Maybe that's just like, maybe they're going back to this police station or something like that. We just kind of ignored it. We get to Kamogawa SeaWorld. I buy my ticket. I turn around and this police officer is in my face. And he's just like, show me your ID card, your zairi toroke. Why are you here? Where do you teach? Where do you live? What schools? Da 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 da. And of course, I'm answering all this in Japanese. He's looking at my card. He's looking at me and whatever. And I give him a satisfactory answer. And he just leaves. Right. And he doesn't even pay attention to my white friend. He doesn't say anything to him. And my white friend is just sort of standing there like, did that just happen? And I was like, yeah, that did. Yeah. Right. And that was sort of like, okay, I made the right decision to go because like I was not going to be able to put up with that happening more than once. And unfortunately, the response that I got was like, oh, maybe he was new or like maybe he, just didn't know and da 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 da. And I was like, okay, but that doesn't explain why he didn't ask my white friend, right? My white male friend. And so that's one of the unfortunate memories that I have from living over there. And I only share that story to let people know, and especially Black people know, that as you think about going to a country like Japan or Korea, there is still discrimination and racism that happens to people of darker skin tones. And so, as much as I love Japan and I love it as a country, it is still working on dealing with those issues, right? And I can guarantee you that every Black person that lives there has at least been stopped once by police for their ID card, no matter where you are, right? You don't have to be, I'm not even surprised. 3 times. I've heard multiple times. There's, people who literally get stopped all the time and like almost by the same person, right? And so I only say that to say that as much as I love it, just remember when you go there to protect your energy in that sense, right? And remember that no matter where you go, it's going to be, a possibility of that type of thing happening. But at that point, that happened. And, I started in the same way that I was very happy that everybody wanted to hang out. The fact that they were all wanting to hang out with me when I was leaving, kind of like, was like, oh, like really, y'all? So I think that those two things kind of confirmed that the shorter stay was the better option for me. And oftentimes now that I'm back, people are like, well, would you want to live in Japan again? Would you want to stay there for the rest of your life or live there forever? And I don't know that I would want to live there forever, just because of the Social Security and like retirement options aren't great for foreigners that live there. Like it's not really like a great system built up for non-nationals, which fine. And so that wouldn't be ideal. But if I could go live there again for like a year or two, I probably would, right? Mostly because I want to go back to my favorite places and like see things and, you know, see all my friends and stuff like that. But I think the short stay for me personally was the best option. I came back and I worked at the consulate, which was like still working in Japan, but just here in Chicago. So that was a good reverse culture shock, sort of ease into reverse culture shock, right? Because I still had one foot in Japan, but one foot in America. But I think that was the reasoning behind it. The main thing was I did not feel it would be fair to my students, who I loved so much, to make them suffer through me being unhappy teaching them for another year. Yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. So for those who are listening about the stop, it normally happens in bigger cities normally. In smaller cities, it happens in small cities too, my bad. But if you're around a base, I know some people like, well, it never happened to me, because that was my case. If you're around like a base area, no one really stops you. It's like, oh, they belong. Like you belong. And Japan is a place of order, and what people don't get is there's this order thing. And order means you are where you belong.
Right.
But once you're outside those parameters, it's like, okay, you don't belong here.
Right.
And it just, once again, like we said earlier, reminds you, do I belong here?
Yeah.
And then, like you said, for your Caucasian friend, he was like, I guess I belong here. He never has to really guess, does he belong? Because he belongs everywhere, kind of. And that's something that gets under your skin. And it didn't happen to me until I was like in Yokohama in the train station waiting for a friend. I was waiting for Ashley one time. And the officer walked up to me and I was like, okay, I complied, went along easily. Yeah. And he was just, it was like, why did you stop me in Yokohama station, all these people moving, and you just chose me? So I just started joking with him, treating him like he was like, I was like, hey, what's your name? Where you from? Right. So he asked me a question, asked him where he's from.
Right.
And he just looked like puzzled, like, hold on, this guy cares about me. And I was like, yeah. I was like, all right, see you later, man. See you next time. And he was just like, hold on.
He was just like, oh my gosh.
Because I'm from the South and I'm used to like getting pulled over for no reason. Yep. So that's how I always interact with the racist cops in the South. So I did the same thing to him. So I mean, I wanted to tell everyone, don't really get mad. Just go along with them happy and blow and bust their bubble.
Yeah. The students would always touch my hair because it was very different. And, you know, hair like mine is often also associated with the mafia because they tend to get perms. And so they would touch my hair. And so I would just touch their hair back. I'd just be like, oh, yeah, your hair's so straight. Like, you know, like things like that. It kind of like breaks their like psyche a little bit. They're like, wait, what I'm doing might not be right. Like what I'm doing might not be okay.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. So it challenges them in that way. That's a good point. Yeah. Or if they stare back at them, like, can I help you? Is something happening? Yeah. That's definitely a thing. But yeah, I think for anybody listening, I think it's a great country, and things like that. But there are still things that happen that.
Because I really think a lot of things that they do here it's not out of hate, it's more of ignorance. No. Like they don't know. So when you be the mirror for them, you kind of reflect back their actions and they're looking like, I don't like it. So they probably don't like it.
Right.
So when I do, like you just said, when y'all do it, it's a great teaching tool. And it normally works, like you said.
Yeah. Just sort of mirror it back and they'll sort of be like, nanka okashi. They'll be like, yeah, that's a little strange. Yeah.
そうですね。じゃあ、次の質問大丈夫ですか? Next question.
Hi.
Let's go into that. Wow, 2 black folks speaking Japanese. If any Japanese person is listening to this, they're probably like, holy shit.
そうだね。 なんかちょっとね、なんか普段は他の黒人と日本語喋れないけど、
そうね、二人はって一緒にいて日本語喋るのがすごくおかしいでしょ。
そうそうそう。そうだけどね。
Most definitely, man. So on to the next question, and this will be the final
Yep.
question of the evening.
Yep.
Then we'll get into our BU drill, which will kind of explain to you about that in a minute.
All right.
But what message and advice do you have for Black men and women that want to come abroad to Japan?
Yeah.
As I found that there is quite so many Black youth that are interested in Japan and want to come here. And I was so surprised and so happy about that to see that. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure you or Lavelle as well don't want them getting sideswiped as hard as I did.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
come in here. So what's your messages or advice that you have for those out there that may be listening to this?
It's interesting that you brought up the youth because actually a friend of mine, Ember Richardson, we helped to start a program called African American Youth Travel Program. Yeah. So we brought over students for a couple of years. And she's now getting her pilot's license, I think, in Seattle, Washington. But that I love introducing youth to Japan. And even when I worked at the consulate, I did that by doing a program on Black youth from the Midwest, mostly Chicago, who had traveled to Japan and what the impact was on their lives. And I think the main message I would say is do it. So go over to Japan because it will change your life. Whether that's because you'll get experience with another culture, another language, living on your own. I think there are a lot of aspects of Japanese culture that could really, and I say this in the sense of like, the way in which they work as a group is something that I think Black people could really relate to and really benefit from. And so I think though there are some aspects of Japanese society that I really think the Black community identifies with and could identify with really well. Yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about, right? And so I think go over there, go to Japan, travel as much as you can. But also remember that, you are still going to be a Black person traveling, and there are going to be situations that might be a little bit more uncomfortable for you than maybe your other traveling counterparts. Don't be afraid to live there, though. Don't be afraid to go there because you're interested in music or maybe anime. I know there's the new anime studio that's been made by a Black man, right, in Japan. There are just so many opportunities and things like that. So my number one piece of advice would be, if you're thinking about it or even questioning it, just do it. Like, go to Japan. You will have an amazing time and you'll get exposure to a culture that is just so wonderful and so informative and just will really change your life. It changed my life completely. If I hadn't gone to Japan my first year of college, I wouldn't even be here talking to you all right now. Like, this is it really changed the whole course of my life. And learning the language, definitely learn the language as much as you can. If only because when you're going into another culture, it's sort of a sign of respect, right? To learn about their language and their culture. And you can't really learn about Japanese language without learning about the culture, because there's hierarchy, there's ways you have to speak to certain people and ways that you speak to other people and things like that. So I encourage you to learn the language as much as you can before going to Japan. And at least learning, especially if you want to go work for a company, how do they do job searches there? It's very different from how we do job searches here, right? I remember actually, it was so ingrained in me, the job searching program, that when I switched jobs from the consulate to my current position, they were a little bit surprised because I was wearing the black suit, the white shirt, my hair was pulled back into a ponytail. And then I show up for my first day and I've got an afro and like makeup and color and all these different things. And they're just like, oh, we thought you were going to be a little more like the day you interviewed. And I'm like, yeah, no, I gave that up when I left the consulate. But knowing that they have a uniform that you wear to get a job is important to know, right? Or knowing when to wear certain things or do certain things is important. So definitely learn about the culture, learn about the language, go enjoy and explore Japan, and also protect your heart and your energy when you do it.
Lavelle, can you chime in on that? Because I feel like we're kindred spirits, man, because Lavelle and I always talk about that and how as African Americans, we can look at them and bring things together on our homeland.
Yes. You know about Dr. John Henry Clark? I think his name was.
John Henry Clark.
He basically said the same thing a long time ago. Like it was like 40, 50 years ago. He said that if Black people can look at Japan, we have a great connection with them and how they would rebuild after World War II. If we took a lot of those elements, we could also rebuild ourselves and be a great asset to humanity in a sense. Like, and that's something, and like you said about the structure, I think that's something that I really admire, and that's why I tell people to come as well.
Yeah.
When we're here, you get to see a lot of things, and hopefully we can all take it back home and implement that in our community. So thank you for sharing that, because that's something I'm always, I would say, pushing towards everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are just so many things that we could learn as Black community, and it's something that'll take years to implement, right? But there's strength in numbers, and the more of us that travel to Japan and know about Japanese culture and things like that, the more that we'll know about it and bring it back as well.
Okay, his name was John Herrick Clark. He was an African American historian. Okay. He has a lot of speeches. Yeah,
I'll look him up.
He was how would you say? And it was funny because he's actually from Alabama, kind of where I'm from, like right down the road. Family. Yeah. I'm from Tuskegee. He's from Union Springs, Alabama.
Yeah.
And he has videos on it. So
okay. I'll look it up.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You ready, Ash?
Yeah, I am ready. I am ready to do the BeU drill.
Yes, Ella, thank you for being here. And the BeU drill is we're gonna throw you two questions. Two options. Okay. And you have three, of course, you can pass. So we're going to ask you the question and you just name which one you choose. Okay. So it's just to help people get a better perspective of who you are and what you like. Okay.
Do I have to say why, or am I just choosing?
Just choosing.
Oh, just choosing. Okay. Yeah. We'll probably laugh about it and things throughout, but you want to kind of alternate and switch off on Questionsville?
Yeah, you can go first because they seem to be very Chicago, you know.
Yes, I did.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
All right, so Ella, you ready? Let's go ahead and get into it.
Okay.
All right. So first one, Harold's Chicken or Uncle Remus?
I knew this was gonna be a question.
Harold.
I'm a Harold.
Oh, hell yeah, that mouse saw 6-piece hard.
Yes. Harold, for sure. But I definitely asked this question. Yeah.
Next one, Chance or Kanye?
Oh, shoot.
Okay, we all know Kanye going through it now, but it's a hard one to know it is.
He is, but I gotta go with Kanye. I've been a fan of his music for a very long time.
No doubt. Yeah. Giordano's a pizzeria Uno.
Giordano's. I like their crust. Yeah.
And this one, Japanese or Korean, which is harder?
Korean for me is a little bit harder. If only because there's these like double vowels. Like long vowels. There's vowels that we don't even have in English, so Korean. Very familiar with that. Yeah. Lavelle, you want to go ahead and take over?
Yes. Sushi or ramen?
Sushi.
Ooh. Really? Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
Oh. Read a book or Netflix?
Read a book.
Ooh.
As you see.
Yes. Delta or United Airlines?
Wow. Okay, this is going to be controversial, but United. I can explain. If you want me to, I can explain.
It's the popular vote.
Okay.
All right, next one. Sneakers or heels?
Heels.
Oh.
All right, last one. Very easy. Everybody know it. Chicken or fish? No, I'm just throwing it out for Japan.
For Japan? Fish, I guess. I chicken. I like chicken.
All right, your personal preference, yeah. No, I was just throwing it out there because sometimes people are like, oh, you go to Japan because you like fish. Like, no, we still love chicken, but
love chicken.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty good fried chicken. Like karaage is not bad.
It's not bad at all.
All right, thank you for participating in the BeU drill. Thank
you. That's it with that. Thank you for running through that real quick.
Woo!
Good job picking Harold.
Sound like you got a story about United or Delta. Which one?
I've got a story, but like I just have the most miles with United right now.
Oh, okay.
That's literally it.
Cannot that.
Yeah.
Cannot that.
Yeah, I thought you had a horror story.
No. I just have the most miles with them right now, so that makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah, I actually made that question because I have horror stories with United, so I'm always like,
I've heard
who else,
many.
who
Yeah.
else got them?
Yeah.
BeU. So
Yeah.
Ella, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It was so fun. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Interviewing a
Yes,
sister.
I would definitely be checking out your show. I like it. It's very,
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And likewise, I will be checking y'all's out and learn more about the BeU Crew and everything. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you just want to kind of shout out your social media tags, anything else you want to drop out there for the masses? Nope.
So yeah, Instagram is Ella the THE Connector, KINEECKTOR. It'll come up once you type in Ella the Kin. You'll pretty much come up with it. Twitter is the Connector. YouTube Ella Marie TEREBI Tere B. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I look forward to talking to more of y'all and all of that. Yeah.
Nice. Definitely.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I think we should make a clubhouse room. Like,
I think we should.
Well, there's already one on there for the Japanese speakers, but
yeah,
something more focused.
Yeah, we can work on that. We can definitely work on that.
No doubt. Well, Ella, not gonna take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
You're a busy woman.
Thank you
in
so
the Shy.
much. Yes.
South side of the Shy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Oh, you as well too. Stay blessed. Peace. Man, that was dope.
Yes, that was very great. Very informative. I like the way she broke down. I think we learned a lot.
A whole lot, man. So you got any last words before we get any shout outs, anything like that, Phil?
Just want to say, I think from listening to her, lessons I learned, and I think everyone should, is step out of your comfort zone, and take risk. Invest into your future by taking these risks, and you be surprised that the universe will give you a great return in friendships and lessons learned, and it will basically, those like seeds planted. In the future, they'll grow. Like she just told you, she'll get the consulate, and now she has like even a greater job now in America due to that, taking that risk, and like in her sophomore year, in her freshman year. And look how it has like changed her trajectory to where she probably would have just stayed in America and had pretty much similar resumes as many of her peers. But by taking that risk and coming abroad, she's now this very cultured woman speaking multiple languages. Yes. And she uncovered a skill that many of us do not know we have. And that's one thing living abroad will help you do, is uncover some skills that you never knew you had. So
absolutely, no doubt about it. And as far as for me, same thing. Once again, thank you so much, Ella, for coming on to the BeU podcast. It's much appreciated. But she did let us know, pretty much to get out there and jump in the pond, man. Don't be afraid. Get out there and do what you think is best for you. Even if you might take a loss monetarily or something like that, do it. Self-invest. I believe that us as African Americans, and I think LaVille really put me on this as well too, and kind of brought it into perspective as well too. Spend that money on that book. Spend that money on that subscription that is going to give you some return on investment on something that you're doing and things like that. Even, the microphones and the things for this podcast, because I haven't tossed and thinking about what I'm looking out to in the future. Spend that $100 or $200 on whatever it is going to make you better. We do it with bags and shoes and clothes and cars and all that bullshit. Excuse my language. But when you're looking at that book in the store, and when you're looking at something that you feel is going to help you grow and maybe make others grow around you, pay for it, especially if you have the money.
Especially if you have the money.
Never think twice. And I've started doing that when it goes to me. It has something to do with me growing, or something that's going to benefit me and make me better, or somebody else better as well too. So with that being said, I'm going to close up with that. Any shout outs, Ella, in particular? Shout outs.
I want to give a shout out to Ella for being here, and everybody else. Just know I love you and thank you, and tune in for next time. Follow me on Instagram. It's a lovely day. And hopefully find us on the Clubhouse, because we might start a room,
Yeah. Be looking out for us on the Clubhouse. We probably start being on there a lot more often. One shout out, I want to give a shout out to both our wives for letting us be in these rooms and being away from them for an hour. And they're like, what them dudes doing in there?
That's
so we appreciate y'all for supporting us in the podcast, because we enjoy doing it. And that's the only shout out that I have for today. So Vil, if you don't have anything else, you want to go ahead and shut this down?
Yeah, let's shut it down.
Yeah, man, most definitely, man. So everybody, thank you for listening in, BeU family. We really appreciate it. So like, as I always say, morning, noon, night, wherever you are in the world, always remember to be you. We are out.
Shit, Negro, that's all you had to say.